Hi, this is the Dr. Deborah Show. This is the show where we talk about bringing peace and calm into your life. Later in the show, we're going to be talking about mental health. We're live at KCSB. Actually, we are recording away from KCSB, Santa Barbara 91.9. KCSB is a platform for cultural expression and thoughtful discussion, providing a diverse educational forum. I'm a Santa Barbara-based clinical psychologist, and I specialize in pediatric neuropsychology. During my clinical training and my current work, I've treated thousands of people, and I want to share my experiences with you. I'm also a UCSB alumni, and I live locally in Santa Barbara. This show is all about our community and how to create compassionate conversations about our well-being and health. Again, I want to welcome our listeners to the Dr. Deborah Show. It's wonderful to have you with us. And as a reminder, this show is psychoeducational and is in the area of neuropsychology and well-being. It's not meant to replace professional mental health advice or therapy, so if you do believe you suffer from a particular disorder, please do reach out for professional help. Today on the show, we're talking about mental health and well-being with a focus on music, photography, and art with our very special guest, Alan Kozlowski. Alan Kozlowski is known for his artistic vision, deep understanding, and love of music and cinematography. Alan has been at the forefront of innovation in filmmaking, for which he has received extensive recognition. He has produced and directed many music documentaries featuring artists Ravi Shankar, Browne, Kenny Loggins, and Lionel Richie. His passion for music began while studying guitar in Spain with legendary gypsy flamenco guitar virtuoso Diego del Gastor. Alan was director of photography in the visually stunning film For Us, the Living, the Medgar Evers Story, and the Telluride Mountain Film Festival Best of Film award-winning film Travelers and Magicians. Alan directed, shot, and edited the HBO special Lionel Richie's Dancing on the Ceiling, and was director of photography, co-produced and edited the ACE Award for Best Music Special of the Year, and Disney documentary Browne, Going Home. Alan also was director of photography, co-produced and edited for Kenny Loggins' documentary Live from the Redwoods for PBS. He also began studying music with Pandit Ravi Shankar and performed with Ravi worldwide at Carnegie Hall, the Kennedy Center, and the London's Royal Opera House. He documented the major milestones of Ravi's life and managed his visual archives, including commemorating Ravi's 75th birthday, where Alan co-produced with George Harrison In Celebration, a 4-CD collector's edition of Ravi Shankar's works. Alan also directed Ravi Shankar, the Concert for World Peace performance at London's Royal Albert Hall, released worldwide by A&E. And for Ravi's 80th birthday, Alan produced and edited Sangeet Ratna, a documentary of the life and work of Pandit Ravi Shankar, featuring interviews with Philip Glass, Zakir Hussain, and George Harrison. And in 1981, Alan developed a new technology where he filmed and directed a 360-degree, 70-millimeter film for Envirovision theaters. He innovated, filmed, and edited a simultaneous 10-screen feature presentation of Chinese culture for Hapa Village in Singapore. Alan also co-founded Pacific Ocean Post, a leading film and television post-production studio in Santa Monica, California, that employed more than 300 special effects, animation, sound, and editorial professionals, and breaking new ground in the integration of digital technology and visual expression. Pacific Ocean Post helped bring home the visual effects Oscars for Independence Day, Titanic, and What Dreams May Come. And POP was acquired by Liberty Media in 1999, facilitating Alan's return to his artistic pursuits. In 2001, Alan directed, filmed, and edited the breathtaking movie Return to Zongzar, thank you, which documented, I might need your help, Khyentse Norbu, thank you, and Dongzar Khyentse Rinpoche returned, thank you, to his native land and monastery in eastern Tibet. Alan's love for Tibet, Nepal, and India allowed him to travel, film, and photograph the people, lands, and cultures of these immensely beautiful lands, creating a stunning visual archive. He published a book called On the Path Tibet, featuring photography from his many journeys. Alan has also created On the Path LLC, a performing arts center, gallery, and multimedia production facility in Santa Monica. His recent work with Jackson Browne is on a documentary focusing on master percussionist and composer Luis Conte's return to his native land of Cuba. Alan also has worked with Jeff Bridges and T-Bone Burnett to capture ancillary material for Jeff's 2009 movie Crazy Heart, starring Jeff Bridges, Colin Farrell, Maggie Gyllenhaal, and Robert Duvall, with music by T-Bone Burnett. And through his continual travel, deep exploration, and extensive relationships, vivid imagination, and unending curiosity, Alan remains to this day on the path of discovery. And welcome to the show, Alan.
Thank you, Deborah.
Thank you for being here. I'm very excited to hear your thoughts and wisdom. And we'll talk a little bit about mental health stigma, and then we'll talk about mental health and music, photography, and art, and then a bit about maybe prevention awareness through music, photography, and art. And we're talking about mental health stigma because mental health is the largest public health priority. It's also the largest financial burden of any health issue in the world, according to the World Health Organization and the World Economic Forum. And also in a Centers for Disease Control report called Attitudes Toward Mental Illness, they found that stigma and embarrassment are two of the top reasons why people with mental health issues do not seek help. And I always like to just remind our listeners that issues surrounding mental health affect everybody. I think everyone has different days where we have things going on. And I wanted to just describe briefly what is mental health. I think of mental health as a physiological balance, meaning our thoughts and our brain and our nervous system are moving at a balanced rate, and that gives us a sense of inner peace. I was wondering, Alan, how would you describe mental health?
There's the qualities of mental health in terms of our daily feelings and awareness, and so being present with that and being aware of those passing thoughts and feelings that go through our daily experience. We can monitor them and be present with them in order to continually kind of tweak our experience on a daily basis and try and refine our daily practice of being present.
Nice. Sounds very mindfulness. I like that, though. I think it's so important for us to be present and to notice each moment as it comes and goes. Otherwise, we kind of accumulate a lot, and then we wonder where all that came from. So I agree completely. Just the idea of just kind of learning how to check in with ourselves, stay present, and allow our thoughts to kind of come and go, kind of like waves in the ocean in a way, right? Yeah. Perfect. I love that. Well, I was excited to interview Alan, too, because music is kind of like medicine and art. And there's more evidence coming out, scientific research, showing that music helps fight depression, lower blood pressure, and reduce pain. The National Institutes of Health have started a partnership with the John F. Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts called Sound Health, Music, and the Mind. And they're trying to expand on the links between music and mental health that explores how listening to, performing, or creating music involves brain circuitry that can be harnessed to improve health and well-being. So I think it's great because they're bringing some neuroscientists together with musicians to kind of speak each other's language. So, and part of my role and responsibility is just to help dispel the stigma. So I just like to briefly explain the two kind of types of stigma. There's kind of like a social stigma where we have attitudes and discriminating behavior that are directed toward individuals who have mental health problems as a result of a label they've been given. And also there's self-stigma, which is when someone internalizes the perception of discrimination if they're suffering from a mental health issue. So, and I'm always trying to come up with a new word for stigma because I think that's kind of an outdated term. So if you have any thoughts on that. I know one guest said we need to have an anti-stigma. But I just feel it's so important for us to take care of our, mental health by being able to discuss our emotions, thoughts, and feelings. If you're just joining us, we're here talking about mental health and music, photography, and art with Alan. Alan, I was wondering, can you explain how music, photography, and art as concepts relate, like with mental health, please?
One of the real blessings I've had in my life was through the magic of having this dream, I was blessed to meet Pandit Ravi Shankar in 1978 after beginning to go to his concerts in 1965 in San Francisco. And I was so moved by his music and that I started pursuing it, trying to learn how to play the sitar, which was his instrument, and magically having this dream that I would meet him. And he showed up on my doorstep 3 days later, and we had this very strong bond, and I started working with him, and then had the blessing to work with him for 40 years until he passed at the age of 92, 7 years ago. And the amazing experience I had just being on stage with him all over the world was his ability to find the moment. So he would, after years of practicing 10, 12 hours a day, he had so much technique and experience in place where he could put that aside, just say a prayer and let go, and then just trust that he would find that moment. And he never failed to find the moment. And every time it was a total new expression. It was all improvised, but he had so much wonderful practice that he put in developing the techniques, which could be said for mental health techniques as well. That if you put in the time in the given techniques and recommendations to build the skills of mental health, then you can let those go and then just find those moments that can pull you out of any stressful moments. If you just go back to breathing and being present as opposed to worrying or being judged or judging yourself or judging others, just allows you to let go and surrender and become present with the beauty of the moments that are there. And I think music is the one of the key elements that allows you to find those moments.
So you think his music helped kind of embrace the sentiment of being present and in the moment?
Yeah.
And I'm looking at that picture up there, right? That's him up there on the wall.
Yeah.
Well, and so he was a major teacher for you, and then it was kind of a natural, it sounds like, progression of learning from him.
He took me under his wing, and I studied music with him, and then because of my media skills, I ended up taking on the magic of his archive, his huge archive of material that dates back to the 40s, and his filmic archive and his recordings and everything else that I'm still working with the foundation, the Ravi Shankar Foundation, to help promote and share that archive and those teachings and the musical contributions so that they can be there to inspire other musicians and artists as we go forward.
Now, was Ravi Shankar, was he, for just people who are listening that maybe don't know as much about him, was he kind of a chosen person for his musical abilities, or how did he cultivate?
He had an elder brother. He had 3 elder brothers, actually, but the eldest one, Uday Shankar, was 20 years older, and they went to Europe in 1931 when Ravi was 11, and Ravi played in the family presentation, and his brother was an amazing dancer, and they staged all these amazing performances all over Europe. And so Ravi, from the age of 11, was performing in this troupe, and then decided when he was 14 to give up those kind of fancy ways in Europe and go back and study with his guru, his teacher, musical teacher, Baba Aladdin Khan, where he lived with him a very removed life of just being present and practicing 10, 12 hours a day.
Very disciplined.
And very disciplined. And then at age 20, left that environment and moved to Delhi, where he became head of All India Radio. And he started creating all these amazing compositions, and the first one to invent the Indian orchestra, where they would put all these different instrumentalists and vocalists together, and he created all these compositions for them. And from there, started expanding out to the West. In 1954, he came to the West. He was invited by Yehudi Menuhin, the fantastic violinist, and he performed all over the U.S. and then at the United Nations and places as a musical ambassador. And then, not too long after that, was introduced to George Harrison from the Beatles, and who became a huge fan and student of his, and used the sitar and the Indian influence to influence the music of the Beatles, that then brought it to the mainstream, and which really brought Indian culture in the late 60s to the West, which brought meditation and yoga and Indian cultural experience of music and art and dance. So it was a real cultural revolution in terms of exposing the people of the West to a whole new way of thinking and expression.
Yeah, we're still kind of trying to work on combining the Eastern, Western medicine. I think is really powerful too.
Yeah.
So he was kind of a leader, like he had a vision of something and he followed that path.
Which he became very active in the music world, performing in all those cultural events of the late 60s, like Monterey Pop Festival and Woodstock, and he performed at those places.
Cool.
And was quite famous because of that, but he was actually an Indian classical musician, and so he had to kind of deal with the pop fame a little bit, but in the meantime, he stayed very dedicated to the classical and pure expression of Indian classical music.
How did he do that? How did he maintain that balance? Because that's hard to do when you're, in that world.
It's difficult because a lot of people associated that music with the drug culture and of the 60s and all that, and he was quite adamant that there's a siren there, fire department. Ravi was quite adamant that the Indian classical music shouldn't be influenced by the drug culture, and he took a lot of heat from the classical music artists of India because they thought he had sold out, but in truth, he hadn't. He just exposed that many more people.
I was just thinking, it was exposure,
which allowed so many more people to be inspired and find the inner peace that comes through that musical expression.
I know, it's very beautiful. In fact, I'm thinking there used to be a series we had here called Mind Supermind. And Judith Orloff, she's a psychiatrist from Venice Beach, and she used to come up here. I still know her. And she would have the drummer from the Doors. Yeah. He would drum. I can't remember.
He's a good friend.
He is, yeah. And while she was talking about psychology.
John Densmore.
Yeah, John Densmore. And then she had, I'm trying to remember the other person's name, but he would play the sitar. So it was kind of a combination of well-being talk with the music as you kind of got infused. And I think that's very powerful. You don't hear the sitar very often, but it's a beautiful instrument. You know what I mean?
It's extraordinarily difficult
to learn. Did you learn how to play that then? Or?
I don't use my talent in the same sentence with someone like Ravi Shankar. He was the all-time master. His, many people don't know him as much as his daughters. He has two amazing daughters, Anushka Shankar, who's followed in his footsteps, is an absolutely brilliant sitar, not only performer but composer. She tours all over the world, and his other daughter with an American woman is Nora Jones, who
nice.
She went down the path of popular music, and
it's probably genetic, the music in there.
I mean, it's quite interesting study because they were both nominated for Grammys in the same year. So I think it's an interesting study in hereditary and genetics.
Well, there is do you know about epigenetics?
Right.
You know how, and if you don't know, if you're listening, epigenetics is kind of like we used to think for example, witnessing domestic violence, that and then it got carried from generation to generation, that was just from witnessing it, but actually gets embedded in your DNA. So it sounds like this got passed down in a musical way, that it got embedded in their DNA.
Right.
Yeah, that's beautiful though, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I know there's a lot of studies too on the health benefits of music. In fact, I looked up just kind of how much of a daily intake they say you need to do to reap the benefits, and they say a British Academy of Sound Therapy found that listening to music for 78 minutes of time actually helps maintain good mental health. So I thought that was kind of neat, and it was talking about how it helps with relaxation and being able to express our emotions and overcoming sadness and having better concentration. So I thought that was kind of a powerful study too. I was wondering, Alan, from your experience, how do you think that mental health and music or well-being, from your experience, how do you think mental health and music, photography, and art kind of intersect?
As a photographer, lifelong photographer for the last 50 years, I've also studied Buddhist meditation quite extensively in Tibet and in India, and was exposed to these techniques called Mahasandhi, where it's immersion in the moment, which totally changed the way that I photograph. It's learning how to find the moment, capture the moment without trying to alter the moment. And so it's a real incredible meditation to be seeing, and so to walk around with your eyes open, seeing is something, and then capturing those moments is an incredible meditation and practice that brings you into the moment in a way that playing music does.
The theme is to come into the moment. And then what was the name of that word you said?
Mahasandhi.
Mahasandhi.
Which is a Buddhist technique and expression of immersion in the moment. And that's a very powerful, changed the way I photograph and see and experience the world.
It does. I remember I read probably 30 years ago Thich Nhat Hanh's book, Pieces Every Step. It's kind of a great beginner book, I guess. But even there's one little quote in there. I know he has a saying. He says, when the dandelion, when you're walking on the sidewalk and there's a dandelion flower, make sure to smile back at the dandelion flower. And it's a way, right, of engaging in the moment, and also I think appreciating nature and what's the beauty around us, right? So you're saying that kind of you find healing in a way through the work that, arriving and being present, and also with the photography, being able to capture it kind of in an organic, non-conformed way. And then do you think that brings about kind of an authenticity or like a well-being with yourself of like, okay, I'm just being present, I'm allowing myself to be in this moment and enjoy it?
Yeah, and not judging the moments. I mean, that's the real Buddhist meditation technique of being present with thoughts and allowing the thoughts to come through and not grasping at them, and just when you realize that you're thinking again, just labeling it as thinking and without judgment one way or the other, and just coming back to the breath and to the present moment, which music allows you to do that, seeing allows you to do that, art, appreciation of art, and all of those elements are elements that you can use to bring you in, bring you into the moment.
We can kind of get lost into something really beautiful.
Right.
Well, and what Alan's talking about too, I think, is the idea of like when we grab on to something. So I know in my mindfulness work, it's kind of the idea when we have this urge to act and we think, okay, I've got to do this, I've got to change it or fix it. It's more the idea of kind of letting things just happen and allowing that and noticing that, I think. And I think also, I was just thinking as you were talking about how important it is for our right brain, even though now we think of the brain as a whole brain idea, that our right brain, which is the creative part, it's always craving attention, and it always needs to be integrated into the left brain piece. So I'm always hoping that we can do that more, where we kind of use our executive, more organization part of our brain and combine that with the more creative side. So I think meditation does do that, because it kind of brings us into what we're having to deal with in the moment.
those things have become increasingly important to me. I've had a few in the last 2 years severe health challenges, and ended up unfortunately having 2 strokes. One that limited the use of my right hand, which has made it, almost impossible to play guitar. Actually, as I've played for 50 years. And,
unless you played left-handed.
Yeah. And then the second stroke wiped out my peripheral vision on the left side. So, as a musician and photographer, to have these 2 limitations, it's really forced me to get back into those moments and techniques and try and find new ways to express, being present, and to reintegrate the left and right sides of my brain.
Maybe you'll come up with a new way to do it a different way, right? That'll be the creative process.
Yeah, right.
Well, and luckily also you have these beautiful teachings too to fall back on. I mean, I would guess that's probably very healing in a way too, to know that you have that to rely on.
Sure. Yeah.
So,
been blessed with many teachings and experiences that I guess that's you've given them those techniques for a reason, and it's important to honor them and utilize them to pull you out of the challenges that otherwise could become nosedives.
it's true. Well, I know I myself have fallen into the mindfulness meditation the last 10 years or so myself, and I just recommend it to every patient I see. I've taught thousands of students in the schools. I'm going in now and doing that too, because now it's been scientifically proven too. It's not just kind of like this metaphysical idea that I think maybe in the 60s people were thinking it was kind of new agey and it wasn't really real, but it really is powerful.
Yeah, it's a foundation for our daily life.
Well, and I think also it's very powerful in that it can help us with the stress, whatever is happening, to just be able to pull back and take in whatever we need and allow that, like you said, without judgment of ourselves. So we move away from like scrutinizing. Right. I know my teacher, Alan Wallace, he says to move away from interpreting, analyzing, and evaluating. I think those are kind of judgmental kind of pieces. So if we can move away from those, and nature, I think, is a great avenue to take in. So it sounds like you got to travel and really absorb some of that.
Alan Wallace is a truly wonderful teacher, and spent a lot of time with him in Thailand, and we went to Mongolia together, and we were working on a film together for a while, and he's truly an inspired, giving individual, and really, as is his wife, Vesta Wallace, who's a fantastic Buddhist scholar as well.
I know, I haven't met her yet. I'd like to have her come on and talk to.
Yeah, you should. She's quite wonderful.
Alan did come on about a month ago, and we talked about the 4 kinds of intelligence, and I think I think in America too, we have such an idea about what intelligence is, but it's maybe not. Maybe there's other ways we can learn too. So I was wondering, Alan, what do you think that your work in the music or photography or art fields has taught you about the attitudes people hold toward mental health? Like, do people talk about mental health, or do they not use that word? Or
I don't have people. I don't experience people talking about it in reference to that. I know that they are inspired by it, and it changes how they experience the moment and how they go through life, and being inspired. And so I know, and I can see, and I've experienced people's changing of their state of being through experiences with art and music, and so I can see the results.
It's not overt, though.
It's not. I haven't really interacted with it on an analysis of.
It's just a question I always ask. I just think it's interesting how people don't talk about it too. Right. But maybe we need a different word. Do you think we need a different word?
Yeah, because there is that, as you were saying earlier, the stigma about mental health. That if there's a problem, if you're unhappy, if you've had some trauma, loss in your life. A death in your family or someone close to you, all of those things, take, working them through and not stuffing them or ignoring them. It's a matter of being present with them and allowing yourself to experience those emotions without judging them, and to allow them to process through and be able
Pastor.
to
Yeah,
let
Freud.
go,
Freud kind of, I like some of his concepts, but Sigmund Freud, he talked about it like digestion. Really chewing on something and tasting it and swallowing it and allowing it to get, like you're saying, be processed. But I think, a lot of us, we don't like what we taste sometimes. Then we don't want to kind of face that. Did Ravi Shankar, did he ever give tips on people who have resistance or things like that? Or did he just say, just kind of embrace it? Or
Yeah, I think it was more by example of just being so present and so creative and so disciplined in the moment that by creating that example, you inspired other people to do the same. And so certainly impacted my life in that way.
you're saying people could witness his well-being, and then they wanted to have some of that, and then they copied him.
Exactly.
Yeah, well, I mean, it sounds like he was had a powerful influence.
Yeah, he's, as George Harrison used to say, I was fortunate because Ravi was George's main teacher, and George used to say that there was only one person who ever impressed him, and
It was Ravi.
he met so many people in his life,
Right.
but there was only one person who ever impressed him, and that was Ravi, and that's because he was never looking to impress someone.
Right.
And he just was so present and so creative in the moment.
He's very engaged, yeah.
Very engaged. So, George used to really be quite, they were so bonded.
So you're
so
saying that
tied
basically
together.
that Ravi kind of taught him his musical abilities, or
Well,
he already had that?
He started off as a Beatle and through all that, and then along the way in the like 65, 66, he met Ravi and then integrated those techniques and that awareness into his music and started, composing these amazing new pieces.
Is that like the Wings era, or is that no?
Wings? That was Paul McCartney. But,
Okay. Sorry.
George,
So sorry.
he had started using the sitar on the Rubber Soul album with Norwegian Wood, and then several songs on the next album, Revolver, and then on the following album, Sgt. Pepper's. He had this incredible composition, Within You, Without You, which used all Indian instruments and tambura and sitar and tabla, and was quite a breakthrough. And then went on after that, after the Beatles broke up, to his own solo albums that used Indian instruments quite a bit.
We'll have to listen to that.
Yeah,
That'd be
quite-
cool if there was like a
quite amazing.
documentary on that, because then people could learn more too about,
There's quite a bit of it in the Martin Scorsese documentary on George's life called Living in the Material World that goes through a lot of his relationship with Ravi and the impact that it had on his life and music. So
That's cool. So if you want to learn more, what's the name of the movie again?
Living in the Material World.
Living in the Material World, which everybody is so focused on materialism too. It's another whole side topic.
Yeah, it's a 4-hour documentary.
It's a 4-hour documentary. Well, I mean, did
Martin
Ravi
Scorsese,
was Ravi was he materialistic, or do you think he was more of a simple kind of person?
He appreciated the finer things in life and was certainly exposed to them. But he didn't crave those things. He understood their place in the world and could appreciate them, and I guess be in the world but not of the world. I guess you could say.
Right. He kind of was. Well, that's the full fluidity,
right,
of just moving through things. Yeah, that must have been fun to be a part of that too. Very exciting and burgeoning. I was looking up holistic health because I know people sometimes say, art and music and those things aren't really, part of our health. But actually the World Health Organization believes that holistic health is really critical for our overall well-being, and that they said that viewing man in his totality with a wide ecological spectrum and emphasizing the view that ill health or disease is brought about by an imbalance or disequilibrium of man and his total ecological system, and not only by the causative agent and pathogenic evolution. And I just thought that was interesting because that came from 1946, but it just doesn't seem to have been fully fulfilled. This idea of really embracing in medicine in America, I think, healing through other avenues besides taking pills. But I think it's getting more out there. Alan, I was wondering, how do you think that music, photography, art accepts or rejects mental health stigma?
I think they're the balm. They're I guess you could say the ointment, the
I like that
remedy
yeah.
for that. They, if you focus on those without focusing on the stigma and the damage, it becomes very healing. And so just by being present and focusing on those things that empower you on that level, I think that is the main impact and focus that they can
I would think that also too that they totally don't have mental health stigma, because music, art, and photography are such a self-expression that everybody's going to have their own way they can do it.
Expression,
right. So it's kind of by that avenue, it kind of lends itself to not be stigmatizing, because there's no right or wrong. It's not a judgmental kind of place that you go to.
It's a state of being that is a wonderful form of expression.
Well, and also it's very fluid, right? Because if you take a paintbrush or you take a photo. Now, when you do your photography, is that something that because you said you capture kind of, have a moment and you're really engaged in that moment and engrossed, is that something where, do you ever have kind of a feeling like of well-being in that moment? Just, having that kind of culmination of your work and being in that environment?
For me, some of my most present and fulfilled experiences in life have been traveling in different cultures and just getting totally immersed in those moments and finding new ways of expression that totally take me by surprise, and and then being able to then share those with other people, which gives a method for communication and bonding on a different level of connecting to the spirits.
Well, it's very peaceful too. Like, I know when I was at your house a couple weeks ago for an event, I was looking at the picture behind us. This one of this, what's that lake called? That
Lake of Turquoise Lions.
It's a beautiful picture because you can kind of lose yourself in that. It has a lot of different. It seems like it has kind of a story that's being told there. So I think you can. And I know my friend and I were looking at it, and it was kind of like a joining moment too, of honoring, that. And you said that lake of turquoise tears.
Lake of Turquoise Lions Tears.
Lake of Turquoise Lions Tears. That's a special lake, though, right?
It's considered by the Tibetans to be a sacred lake where there's been a lot of teachings and discovered, and so people, all the monks and lamas and yak herders, and they all go up there either on foot or on horseback and do their practice. They do something called Kora, where they circumambulate the lake 3 times while they do their prayers, and they believe that it brings many blessings.
Well, the Buddhists are very into 3s.
Right.
Do you know? I don't actually know the origin of that, though. Do you? Or no?
Sure,
but it is interesting how they walk around 3 times. Right. And I notice when I teach people, it's kind of, I always say, if we do a breath, let's do 3 breaths, or if we're going to do a mantra, let's do 3, kind of 3s. But I do think using the arts and healing really actually lends itself nicely to the medical view in kind of resolving emotional, somatic, which is like our body sensations, artistic and spiritual dimensions to our learning. And I think when people are invited to work with creative or artistic processes that affect more than their identity, they're able to kind of create this congruence between their affective state, like what they're feeling, and their conceptual sense making. So through our creativity and imagination, we can find our identity, and also kind of a reservoir of healing So the more we understand that relationship between creative expression and healing, I think the more we're going to discover the healing power of the arts as we go along here. I mean, it's kind of interesting. I didn't realize Ravi was so, he said 1940s, so he'd been doing that a long time. Alan, I was wondering, how do you feel a person receiving support, from music, photography, or art could help a person through a mental health crisis? Sometimes people hit crossroads and they, they don't know where to go or what to do or where to turn. So I was just thinking maybe someone would find inspiration through some of your ideas in that regard.
Yeah, certainly finding a personal practice for yourself, whether it's a Christian practice or a Buddhist practice or a Hindu practice. I think the important thing is to step outside of yourself and get exposure to different ways of thought and expression that can lift you. Being stuck in those moments where we find ourselves sometimes, where we start struggling and don't know where to turn. But I think, reaching out and, even the words help to some degrees has a stigma to it. But to explore the resources that are so available these
abundant
days, online, abundant these days, and to be able to be open to and taking those in and studying and exploring is so ripe with so much opportunity to change your state of being.
Right. Well, and also neurologically, that's very true too, because I like what the Dalai Lama says, we keep going down the same cow cart because they have all the cow carts in India, and then we get these deep grooves neurologically, and it's very hard for us to move into another pathway. But I think with art, it activates so many parts of our brain, or music or photography, any of the healing kind of creative arts. They allow us to maybe move away from this one spot where we're really thinking about something and so focused, to kind of allow ourselves to move into a different space and place. So you think it sounds like that could be beneficial. I agree completely. I was wondering if there's someone listening, because we do have UCSB students and people like that. How do you think, if someone's interested in music, photography, or art, and they're wanting to approach their profession from a healthy perspective, do you have any recommendations from all your years of experience for people who are just starting out? I know it's a big question. It's okay if you don't. I know.
There's so many apps and websites and things these days to reach out to. I was involved as creative director for a number of years and actually branded this app site called Imagining Clarity, imaginingclarity.com. It's a company in Finland that created, and Alan Wallace. Alan Wallace was one of the major teachers on it, and along with Matthew Ricard, the incredible French Buddhist monk who was the translator for the Dalai Lama for years. So there's many teachings on there, imagineclarity.com, and there's all over the App Store these days. There are apps that give opportunities for teaching new kinds of meditation and expression and being present and mindfulness. That I think it's not as important which one you do. It's important to do something that you find that you can connect to, that gives you a different shift in your perspective, because we all need to get out of our own way.
We can get into a rut. Yeah. Well, it's very expansive, I think, too, because we can move out of ourself. And I know people do really like the apps. Do you think, Ravi, I know some of my teachers in mindfulness, they say, with all the apps and everything like that, people really should learn some basis of some simple meditation and then emphasize or accentuate that with the apps. Do you think that he would agree with that? Or?
Definitely, As I probably didn't read that insignia on the photo that he signed to me over there, but he said, "Dearest Alan, practice brings one nearer to perfection."
Practice brings what?
Brings one nearer to perfection.
Right.
So that's what it's about. It's about developing a practice and being consistent with it,
right?
So that you can, when you're born, you're not a classical pianist, but if you
cultivate it,
cultivate it and practice, there's no question that you will get better.
It's true.
And so, same thing with writing or reading or photography or music. Or
you have to learn it. I know, and I've had some photographers and artists and things on, and I know that idea. Like, I think a lot of people think with creative expression that the first time they produce it, it has to be like perfect. But I mean, you've been doing this many decades, so
it's a practice, and the practice. It's not about the end result. It's about the practice,
the process that you go through. Yes.
Buckminster Fuller, who was always an amazing inspiration to me, the incredible thinker and scientist who was the one who invented the geodesic dome back in the 50s and 60s. He always said something that goals were processional events. That goals just set you in motion on the path, and it's not about the end goal. It's about the results. It's about what happens along that path of processional events that happen once you embark in that movement on the path, and that's what life is about.
It's true.
Not getting to the goal, but about the experience.
It's kind of about the wonder of life in a way, right? Of allowing that to happen. Yeah, I think it can be very debilitating for people when they get very fixated on an idea, and then they lose that perspective on all the other great things that are around there. Well, nature is very much that way, right? It can teach us. Yeah. Did Ravi talk about nature, or did he?
Well, he was very integrated in nature. I mean, he was the most curious person I ever met. He was always engaged and interested in film, interested in music, interested in sport, interested.
That's
in
very
politics.
healthy, actually.
Yeah, just always curious, and up until 92 when he performed his last concert. 3 weeks before he died, we wheeled him out on stage in a wheelchair on oxygen, and we had no idea what he'd be able to do. And he sat down and just ripped for an hour and a half, and put his instrument down, waved goodbye, put him back in the wheelchair, and that was his last musical notes. And he let go, and he was ready to go. He'd been performing from the age of 11 till the age of 92, which is pretty extraordinary.
That must have been sad, though, too, to have to lose someone that... Do you feel his presence with... I feel like he's with us right now, because he's staring at us. Right there.
I feel him daily. It's my daily inspiration.
He's infused you. Yeah. Well, and also I do believe kind of in destiny, like maybe you were meant to meet him. I think you were meant to meet him and be with him and learn from him.
When my father died and his son died about the same time in 1991, and we adopted each other. I became his surrogate son, and he became my surrogate father. And
that's
we
beautiful.
really had this strong bond. And I did everything I could to serve his legacy and continue to do so. Yeah. We're getting ready to celebrate his 100th anniversary year. Next April 7th will be his 100th birthday. And so we're celebrating with 4 major concerts at Royal Festival Hall in London on his birthday, and then a foundation benefit show in San Diego on May 16th, and then Disney Hall on May 19th, and then Carnegie Hall in New York on May 29th. And
will they be playing his music? Or
his daughters will both be part of it.
Oh, nice.
As will Philip Glass and Jackson Browne and Jeff Bridges are going to sit in and do a few tunes, and they were all close with him as well. So could be a big celebration with all of Ravi's top students coming together to celebrate his legacy.
And will that be something people can watch on TV? Or
we're planning on filming the show in San Diego and then putting it out to honor his 100th year. He's
alive and well in a way, right? Yeah. He's still here presently with us.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we're just going to go through a couple more questions. I'm really enjoying learning about Ravi because actually I didn't quite know. I mean, there's a lot of really important gurus, right? He's pretty much a guru.
Yeah, music guru. He didn't ever try and present himself as better than, or there's this kind of stigma about the Indian gurus. You know, a lot of them are teaching, you know, searching for kind of wealth and fame and all of that, and they typically all kind of fall short on that level. And Ravi was never looking for, you know, monetary gain or anything. And in fact, in his entire life, he never charged a student for a lesson. He gave lessons from his heart. It was a tradition that was passed down from heart to heart. And
that's beautiful.
in exchange for that, his students would then pass that on and never charge
them.
Other people for
it's like
lessons.
The pay it forward idea.
Exactly.
That would have been cool if they had done a study where they like measured his heartbeat and that person's heartbeat and their physiological reaction, because there must have been something going on there too, heart to heart.
Sure.
Well, the heart is a very powerful part of us that we forget too, that you know can guide us and help us to heal. So, and if you're just jumping in, we're here with Alan, who works in the music and photography and art fields, and we're talking about some of the ways that music, art, and photography impact mental health on the global community and our local community. I always like to ask people if you've heard of, Alan, if you've heard of any campaigns or organizations in the music, photography, or art fields that work specifically toward reducing mental health stigma. I know that's kind of a funny question. And
there's some wonderful organizations like the Music Cares Foundation who have done a lot to raise awareness for healing and for taking care of the musicians who have added so much to our culture, but have sometimes fallen on hard times or had challenges, whether it be with drugs or alcohol or other mental health issues. And so they've been a huge supporter, and they do a big benefit the night before the Grammys every year.
Oh, cool. Okay. And what's that one called?
Music Cares.
Music Cares. I know, yeah, there's a lot more. I noticed when I did some research on music, yeah, there's a whole mental health kind of committee. I was just thinking if there was some sort of a campaign to kind of move people toward acceptance, you know, so we don't all have to feel so uncomfortable talking about mental health. But I think music has a way of doing that too, because the person shares their kind of story and journey in their songs and in their photography. It's like, you know, you show that through that, your artwork. And I'm just always trying to imagine a world where each person has the opportunity, you know, toward self-peace and through the ability to overcome these like mental health barriers and obstacles. So, how do you think, Alan, we could begin working toward acceptance of mental health or well-being?
Just by promoting good habits and being acting by example, by you know, demonstrating how and sharing art and things that inspire us.
So connecting sharing.
With people and, who are in our environment, and hopefully, you know, I always had the philosophy of trying to give more than I take. You know? And, so going through life and, as you say, paying it forward, where you, you know, try and, you know, smile at the people in the checkout line, or, you know, doing those type of things that hopefully inspire people to pass that along to somebody else.
Actually, there was a study I saw where if you're in the supermarket and you have some time, you could try as an experiment if you want, but where if you are in line and there's a long line of people and everyone's kind of getting in a bad mood, and you start letting people go ahead of you, it's kind of like smiling at someone in a way, that actually, and just kind of stand back and watch and notice, the line will actually move faster, and the people will be in a better mood because, right, they're feeling like some sort of a connection to each other. But I also was going to just touch, because I know a couple minutes ago you mentioned the idea of consistency, and I do think when I start seeing people in my practice, I always say, you know, two things that are really key are consistency and persistency, because I think people kind of think, oh, I'm just going to try this out and then I'm going to let it go, but like just kind of keeping at something, and then also persisting and saying, you know, it's okay if I didn't do it perfect the first time, I'm going to keep working at that. Okay, maybe we'll just do like two more questions, and then you're doing a great job. I appreciate you sharing. I was wondering, Alan, how do you think that music and photography and art intersect within our community, and why is it important for us to kind of talk about, you know, the intersection of our well-being and music and photography and art, like even locally?
so easy in these days of the internet and for people to get disconnected and feel isolated.
True.
So to have cultural events where people share music and art and get out of their own shells and get out into the world and actually interact with real people, I think that is very healing, and it's important to have community in that way so that we don't become isolated, and that it inspires us to want to give and to share and to smile and laugh with other people. That we become so isolated easily.
It's like we're part of something bigger than ourselves.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it's true. When you see people listening to music, like at the Santa Barbara Bowl, it's like everybody is such a part of something bigger. I remember going to James Taylor concerts like in college, 30 years ago here, and it was so nice because like I remember the whole crowd put their arms around each other, and this is the late 80s, and was just kind of swaying back and forth. And I mean, you didn't even know the person next to you, but you just kind of trusted that with the music, you let yourself go. So I think that it's really important for us. We do have some amazing music and art and photography.
The culture here in Santa Barbara I love living here. It's my third time living here. I lived here in the 70s.
Did you?
And then the 90s, and then moved back 7 years ago. So I could be close to my young daughter who lives nearby.
Oh, nice.
And, so she's very involved in arts and culture as well. So it's been my inspiration to try and expose her to as much of that as possible.
She's going to carry on your tradition.
I hope so.
Nice. Well, Santa Barbara's kind of an unusual place.
Yeah.
It's I think now especially we have so many amazing people living here. That's why I like having these compassionate conversations. Okay, maybe I'll ask one more question. Would that be okay?
Sure.
This is kind of my final question, is I was wondering, Alan, how do you think we can put more music, photography, and art into our lives to help to create more like balance and mental health and well-being?
First, I think it begins with an awareness of its value. And so once we realize that value, we start reaching out and exploring those elements and finding the ones that we connect with, and it'll be different for everybody. Some might be into going to the museum and studying old painting styles, and other people are inspired by photography, and other people are inspired by nature. And
Yep.
it's important to find those elements that we all individually connect with, and then just being so dedicated to having them active in our lives on a daily basis, so that we don't isolate ourselves from that inspiration, because we all need to
Have that within us.
have that.
Well, I think, and there's different ways of infusing that into us. I think we can just look out the window, and take in nature, but also we can put on a nice piece of music.
Right.
We could go, like you're saying, go to an art show. I know a lot of people like sewing. I think, we have some little art stores here. You can go get paint. It doesn't really matter. I mean, it's just more the process that I think we're both talking about. And also, I find when people, like in my practice, do artwork, some people make posters, and they'll write different things as a self-expression. The main point is to allow yourself that space and place and to honor yourself, I think, and make sure to breathe while you're doing that, because breathing really refreshes your blood, right, and helps you become more present. And I think, too, a lot of our worry comes from, too much about the future or the past. So if we can become more present and enjoy it, because actually, there's a lot to enjoy right now. Okay, Alan, well, I want to thank you for coming on the show, and I was wondering, do you have any final words of wisdom for our listeners?
Be present, find the moment, find your inspiration, and stay present with that every day, because each day it will become more engaging and more inspirational, and you'll continue to evolve on your path, whatever that chosen path might be.
And have more inner peace, right? I agree completely. I think some ways we can work together and help create a supportive environment that can empower and care for the individuals, like volunteering, checking in with ourselves, like we're talking about, learning about other cultures. If you're, looking up information, make sure it's from like an accurate, reliable source. And I think that this can lead to understanding, including, and caring. Can you imagine a world where we can all share our feelings and our thoughts more freely, and where we can move toward health for all human beings? I know there's a lot of work to be done, but I think if we each do our part toward ending negative perceptions about mental health and raise awareness, we can live in a more loving, safe, and accepting world. And I want to thank my very special guest, Alan, for coming on the show today. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much. You're such a wealth of wisdom, and I know we probably just touched like on the very tip of all of your work, but hopefully I'm sure someone will get some inspiration from that. And if you have questions, you are welcome to write to me on my Facebook page, The Dr. Deborah Show, and if you have questions for Alan, maybe I'll pass that along to him if there's someone that has a question.
You can also contact me through AlanKozlowski.com. And Alan@AlanKozlowski.com is the email, and that website has a lot of my work on it. So,
Yeah, check that out.
If people are interested, AlanKozlowski.com or AlanKozlowski.photography. Both those sites have a lot of my work.
And you can learn more about Alan, because I just barely touched on some of that, and I know it is a beautiful website. Well, I'm so thankful to have you, so thank you for sharing.